Hey bitches, how's it going? Welcome back. My name is Elias. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about all of the recent books I've read for the month of September. You might have noticed I made a video like this like a couple of weeks ago. I feel like I've read a decent amount of books to actually make a full video about it. And two, I wanted to talk about it with you guys while they're still fresh in my mind right here. So I read a total of 5 books for the month of September. For the month of October, I'm sort of hoping to take a step back in terms of reading because in November and December, I feel like are the 2 months where I will really dive headfirst into the amount of books I really want to read. Trying to complete my 50 books a year Goodreads challenge. We'll see how that goes because I am just failing behind every year. I do this to myself. I think for the past couple of years, I feel like I've pulled through, so we shall see at the end of this year what shall happen. And also at the end of the video, I will briefly go over the potential books I might be reading for this month of October. So before we get further into the video, I would like to thank today's video sponsor, the one and only Book of the Month. So I've been working with Book of the Month for, I think it's like a year now, which is crazy because I love them so much. So Book of the Month is essentially a super fast and popular online growing book service for readers where every month their team vets through hundreds of books so you can spend more time reading and less time researching, literally doing the Lord's work for us. So thank you. One of the best things about Book of the Month is that they're completely risk-free, meaning if you're not vibing with that month's particular selection of books, you can totally skip it and you won't be charged. Another great aspect that I love about them is that they have the best prices for newly released hardcover fiction that you literally won't find anywhere else. What was that? Exactly. Silence. It's a beautiful thing. Let me tell you, Book of the Month, they're the main character because no one else does it like them. If you guys are interested, and you should be, you can literally get your first book for only $9.99 with my code ellias. Literally my name. ELLIAS. It could not get any simpler than that, okay? First up, we have a thriller, Everything We Didn't Say. A woman returns to her hometown to solve the riddle of her family and horrific crime. Next up, a historical fiction, The Lincoln Highway. Set in the 1950s, shenanigans ensue when Emmett Watson hits the open road with his 2 friends and a brother in tow. Next up, we have romance, The Ex-Hex. This quirky, steamy rom-com about a major post-breakup hex will put a powerful spell on you. Next up, we have literary fiction, Harlem Shuffle. A riveting and historical heist story that will leave you feeling in on the deal. Lastly, we have speculative fiction, The Perishing. Set in 1930s LA, this follows a pioneering journalist exploring shifts in time, identity, and love. So while those are the main selections for October, I also want to thank Book of the Month for sending me a couple of their add-ons for this month, one of them being Apples Never Fall by Leanne Moriarty and The Book of Magic by Alice Hoffman. So if you guys are interested in any of these books this month, feel free to click on the link and use my code down in the description box below. And thank you again to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so we are actually going to go from the best books to the worst books on this list, and that's not even saying much because I literally only gave one book on this list 4 stars. So first up, we have Dark Rise by C.S. Pacat. So, Dark Rise. Guys, this book was so good. What did I say about this book? Let's look on Goodreads. What did I say about this book? Let's look on Goodreads. Dark Rise. This is why I'm making a video like I am, because if I don't, I'll forget. Alright, now that my mind's refreshed, so the story follows this young boy named Will in pre-Victorian era London. And what do you know? There's obviously something very special about this boy because he has pretty much been on the run his entire life. And what's really interesting about this is that magic exists in this world. People just don't remember it because it's been such a long time. And in this world, there are like these 2 factions against each other, the stewards who are for the light and the dark, as you can clearly guess, are evil. And Will somehow gets caught up and embroiled in this situation where he joins the stewards to fight against the dark. And I'm just gonna leave it at that because the less you know as you go in, the better it will be, trust me. There are so many good twists and genuine surprises that I don't want to spoil for anyone. I feel like if you want to start off somewhere really light and fantasy without it being too heavy-handed or chaotic, this would be the perfect book for you. And this is the type of book that I can totally see blowing up on TikTok. It basically has everything that they love. There's a heavy, super slow burn romance. We sort of have that enemies to lovers trope. It's also gay, and the main character is also bisexual, which I loved. There's also aspects of reincarnation, villain origin stories, and it also subverts like your basic everyday YA tropes like the chosen one, the best friend, the love interest, and the author sort of played around with all that, which made it a really fun read. In my Goodreads review, I said that this book is a byproduct if Demon Slayer had a threesome with Lord of the Rings and the Dark is Rising series. To my surprise, the author actually took that quote and put it on their social medias, which is cool and all, but it was just really unexpected, and I was like, maybe I would have reworded differently or something, been more like professional in some way, but hey, honesty is honesty, so that's not even a thing. But anyways, while I did enjoy the book and the main characters and the slow burn of it all, there were some aspects in the book which I did not like, especially towards the middle of the book. I thought it sort of dragged, and I would have given this book a 3 stars if it weren't for the last 50 pages. Last 50 pages, I just gotta say, chef's kiss. Can't wait for the sequel. So if you're looking for a really fun, light, queer fantasy book to read, highly recommend this one. Okay, so for every subsequent book on this list, I've given each of them less than 3 stars. Okay, so let's get into it. Alright, so first up on this list is The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix. So this is my first book from the author, and I'm very curious to see what his other books are like. This one revolves around a group of women who are in a support group for therapy, for their PTSD, for what trauma they've been through, surviving all these massacres in which all their friends have died, basically giving them the title as The Final Girl. If you didn't know, I love slashers. I love watching slashers, I think they're really fun. However, I'm starting to think that slashers, just in book form, don't do it for me. It is just a different experience, like watching it on screen versus like reading it. A lot of the aspects that I love in slashers just aren't there in books. And I guess that's just me personally. I think that so far of all the slasher books that I've read, there isn't one that I've like truly really enjoyed and loved, except for Riley Sager's Final Girls. However, I think that if I had read that now currently, I probably wouldn't have given it like 4 or 5 stars, because that was like truly one of the first adult slasher books that I read, and I was a lot younger and different back then, so who knows. But this one was a huge letdown, very underwhelming, disappointing for me. The worst part of this book for me were the characters. The writing for me in this book was like basically all tell and no show. There were so many instances where he would describe certain characters and their backstories and just page after page writing about them and their history, but we really never got to see that sort of in that aspect of like that book form. I felt like in the end I was sort of like spoon-fed this information without any of the taste, the flavor, if you get my gist. So, and the characters in this book, oh my fucking god, I wanted to strangle the main character. This girl, okay, she has survived her own trauma, her own massacre, right? And because of this trauma, she essentially has all these rules and precautions to help her stay alive in this climate and everything. And that would have worked. I would have been fine with it if this character was not a huge fucking contradiction to herself and to everything that she has said. Her actions prove otherwise. Literally everything that she does and say is just a huge juxtaposition, okay? I think I did that right. Like literally homegirl breaks through all the rules, all the precautions, gone out the wind, everything is gone. Like the mindset for some of the things that she does, her justification for these things are so stupid. It literally makes 0 sense to me. Like to me, it literally goes against all horror movie logic. Like there were so many scenes in this book to me that were just so far-fetched. Like yes, you sort of have to suspend your belief, your mind when it comes to these type of books and these sort of like scenarios and thrills and all that. But come on, there has to be some sort of like plausibility, like believability, some realism here. And I feel like if this was made into a movie, no one would really bat an eye, but reading about it in book form just really took me out of the story, out of the context, the characters, and the ending for this book was really predictable. Everything about this book, I think, was predictable in its own sense. Like I was able to tell who the killer was. Their motive to me was really fucking stupid. I mean, when it comes to slashers in general, motives tend to be non-existent, okay? And I tend to forgive that. But after all the grievances that this book had to offer, coming upon the motive, I was like, so fucking dope. Anyways, am I ever gonna read a book from this author again? Yes. I think deliverance-wise, it just wasn't on par with what I was expecting, and it is what it is. It's okay. It's the Final Girl Support Group. Man, 2 out of 5 stars. Huge disappointment. Alright, so the next disappointing child on this list is The Other Black Girl. So this is one of our book club picks for the Late Night Book Club, and I gave this book 2 out of 5 stars. This was not it. I guess if you're looking for a straightforward, standard, traditional thriller, this might not be the book for you. I feel like this is the type of book where, yes, while on some levels this book did portray, the prejudice, the struggles, the fear of being a person of color in a workplace, especially women of color in a workplace, I feel like it didn't fully expand on that. I feel like it didn't fully cross that bridge to the other side. Instead, it felt like it got stuck halfway, and that was basically it. You were stuck and there was nothing you could do about it. And there were also like other factors in which I didn't like this book. One of them being the main character. I feel like as a main character, she was just so flat and two-dimensional. Like I literally could not list anything great or what she liked or who she was as a person. I feel like she was just there, a POV, a perspective we can sort of like read and learn about, experiencing all the struggles as a person of color in a workplace. But that was basically it. She also made like so many stupid decisions. When certain things happened literally right in front of her eyes, she would question it, but she would never really fully investigate it or, call for help or anything like that. I really wished we sort of switched from her POV to like her best friend. She was a much more interesting character to read about. Nothing literally happened throughout this book until like the last I want to say 50 pages or so in this book. Like the only little thing I got out of this book was just how extremely white publishing can be. But that in itself is not even saying much either. If you wanted to know more of my thoughts and my co-host's thoughts and more details about this book, we did a last show for this book on Joel's channel, and I'll leave that somewhere on the screen where you guys can go ahead and watch that, because at the end of the day, this was not it. This was presented as The Devil Wears Prada meets Get Out, and you got like a very like marginal taste of either of those. So to say that I was disappointed is an understatement. So, alright, so the next 2-star book that I read was These Hollow Vows by Lexi Wright. I don't have the book, thank God, because I borrowed it from the library because I saw all the hype on like Twitter or something. You know, I should literally just make a video about books I found and read through book Twitter, because literally every single one of them have just fucking sucked, okay? So this book, I don't even remember what this book was about, so I'm gonna have to go on Google and tell you guys what the synopsis is.
Cool Prince meets a court of thorns and roses in this sexy, action-packed fantasy about a girl who is caught between two treacherous fairy courts
and their dangerously seductive princes. Sounds pretty straightforward and generic and basic, you know? And it basically was, okay? Like, there was literally nothing special about this book. Okay, you know the trope where the girl is like, I'm not like other girls, you know, I don't like dresses or fancy parties. I need to wear pants because that's the only way I can fight. Just can't think about boys right now, and my hair is the only good thing about me, and I got my mother's eyes, and I'm pretty good with the knife if I do say so myself. And I have this hidden power that I don't really tell anyone, but fuck me, I'm like special because this power only I can use and only I can wield and only I can save the kingdom. That is literally almost every single YA fantasy. And TBH, there's nothing really wrong with that, okay? In most fantasy books, like, we have characters like that. But those books in themselves are sort of halfway decent because they have characters who are elevated through character development, writing, the plot, and other characters around them. Can't say anything happens like that in this book because literally this main character is so two-dimensional. Not even two-dimensional, she's one-dimensional. She's straightforward, standard, basic, and that's basically it. She is just pretty much your basic average NPC. If you didn't know what NPC stands for, it stands for non-playable character. Background character in like a game or something, okay? Literally, you already know who she's gonna end up with. I don't even know why I'm giving this book 2 stars because I'm being fucking generous, okay? Like, literally drop a fantasy series where the main character has end up with like the cinnamon roll or the cinnamon character, the character who's like sweet and nice and good looking. But no, she ends up with the bad boy, okay? I think it's just like a staple fantasy rule at this point when it comes to YA fantasy in general. I literally can't tell you anything more about this book. It's literally so bland and just so generic. The only saving grace about this book that I have, I flew through this like no other. Like, say what you want to say, but when it comes to books like this, I just like shut my brain off and just read and just don't stop. And at the end of it, I'm just like, why? But I don't really hate myself for reading it. I'm just like, I had like a semi-decent time. Like, it was stupid, but whatever. Don't really think too much about it. It's like a picture book, you know, like you go to like the doctor's office and they have like a stack of picture books in the corner. And as a kid, you just go through them because you're like bored. You're not really hating yourself reading them. You're sort of having like a semi-enjoyable time, you know, just to pass the time. And that's how I felt reading These Hollow Vows, this hollow book. So, 2 out of 5 stars for this one. Moving on. Alright, so the next 2 out of 5 star book that I read is The Trial of Sorcerers by Elisa Kova. So this book wasn't as bad as These Hollow Vows. This one sort of had like an elevated storyline and a really intriguing, interesting world building around it, and sort of like this magic system surrounding the characters. So gotta give it props to that. Every person in this book was just pretty flat, and the writing was questionable at times. Okay, so this book mainly follows this young sorceress who gets caught up in a trial where she has to perform and overcome certain obstacles to compete in this trial for bringing the whole kingdom together, essentially. I enjoy reading books about magic and different magic abilities and different casts. And so the world building in this one was really interesting. I wanted to know more about the lore and everything. And I found out this book is actually a spin-off off of 3 other book series that the author has written. So prior to this book, the author has written like 30 other books. However, I would have never guessed if that was the case, because the writing in this book was just not it for me, sis. It was like almost at times reading like fan fiction. And I'm not saying like you have to have great writing or anything like that, you know, especially like in fan fiction or whatever. But there are some expectations to a degree. I think overall, like, I didn't really hate or like this book. I thought it was just okay, like below average, I guess, when it comes to like a standard fantasy. Will I ever read from this author again? I don't know, sort of like a hit or miss for me. You have like the insta-love, you have the main character who thinks she's the main character, who doesn't want to believe she's the main character, but secretly she is. I mean, you do have a love triangle. You do have, in this book, enemies to lovers in this case. So if you like that trope, that has it going on for this book. Don't really have too much to say about this fantasy book. Honestly, when it comes to YA fantasy now, I think I'm no longer like the right target demographic anymore. Like the only reason why I'm picking up these YA fantasy, I feel like it's just because they're not as well written as like other fantasy books. They're just honestly there for me to just pass the time really quickly, while at the same time maintaining the idea to myself that I'm reading while passing the time. So that's pretty much it for all the books that I've read. But before we end the video, I want to quickly go over the books that are potential books for the month of October. Actually, one of them is mandatory, and that is If We Were Villains. And this one is our book club pick for the Late Night Book Club for October. I heard a lot of people really like this one. This is like dark academia, and it's sort of like The Secret History, but with a lot of Shakespeare elements. And I'm really excited because growing up, I think I've read almost every work by Shakespeare, and my favorite actually is A Midsummer's Night Dream. So looking forward to reading this one. Next up is Dark Rose by Chevy Stevens. All I know about this book is that it follows two different women in their POVs as they try to strive and follow along this dark, mysterious, long-winded road where countless women have disappeared on, and trying to solve the mystery. One of them is like the victim's sister, and the other is a girl who lives near the road into town. Don't know too much about it, but I did want to read like a standard traditional thriller for this month. So last but not least is The Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig. I heard fantastic things about this. I've heard it's sort of like Imaginary Friend by Stephen Chbosky, which I absolutely loved. This one follows like a family in sort of like a haunted house situation scenario where they have to defeat the evil with their steadfast familial love. We love to see it. This one's a really thick one, and I wanted to read this one because it's sort of like on that horror aspect, and I haven't read a lot of horror books in general, so hopefully this one will satiate that appetite for me. So that's pretty much it for this video. Please let me know down in the comments below if you have read any of these books, if you plan on picking them up. What did you guys think? What books you guys plan on picking up for the month of October? Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you all soon with a new video. I finally finished. But before we get further into the video, I'd like to kindly mention that this video is sponsored by Book. I would like to mention that this video is sponsored by Book. Jesus Christ. Before we get further into the video, I would like to mention that this video is sponsored by Book of the Month. Before we get further into the video, I would like to mention that this video is sponsored by Book of the Month. Well. I also want to thank Book of the Month for sending me. Peace out. I also want to thank Book of the Month for sending me their add-ons